Hi, I'm Tom Hazlett from the Information Economy Project, and I'm very much looking forward to our program today. And to introduce our speaker is Professor Oswald from the School of Public Policy. Phil?
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Phil Oswald from the School of Public Policy. I have been very interested recently in the branding problem we have in academia. So you think about, someone says it's government, kind of know what that means. It's going to be plodding, it's going to be slow, pretty ineffective. You say it's business, that's sort of, might be a little brutal, but it's going to be efficient. When you say it's academic, it means it's irrelevant. It's not even worth conversation. It's academic. It's actually worse than it's government, believe it or not. And so that's the kind of space that we inhabit, and it's a really difficult thing to overcome because as soon as you start to say, "Hey, professor," there's almost this kind of insult that goes with that. Like, what's the professor going to say? So how are we going to get out of that? Well, one of the ways that we're going to get out of it is we're going to have people like Vivek Wadhwa, who are going to take their time, direct their energies to participate, not just as one-time speakers, but as active contributors to research, to scholarship, to advancing understanding about something that, God forbid, might actually matter. And most of the stuff that Vivek works on matters, at least from my standpoint, enormously. He's, as you already know, the co-founder of Seer Technologies. Founder or co-founder?
It was me and a bunch of people.
Okay, well, anyway.
It's litigation.
And Relativity Technologies, very successful entrepreneur. And now this whole list of affiliations: visiting scholar, UC Berkeley, senior resident, associate, Harvard Law School, executive and resident, Pratt School of Engineering, Duke University, columnist, Business Week, contributor, TechCrunch. Anyway, a major player, a ubiquitous presence, and a guy who is contributing in all sorts of ways to a lot of things that matter tremendously. So, and without further ado, Vivek Wadhwa.
Just stand here and collect through.
Sure, how do I do that? Great. My short title is Entrepreneur turned Academic. What I'm going to talk about my experience after having joined academia. I used to be a tech guy. I founded 2 companies and then switched gears for a while and joined academia. And I thought I'd take a year off in this country club. It's Duke University, beautiful campus, and so on and so on. And I started looking into some national policy issues because you read a lot about about U.S. competitiveness, and even now everyone talks about engineers and scientists being the key to competitiveness. And then you hear about the U.S. falling behind. We need to fix STEM, K-12 education. We need to do this, we need to do that. And then you go abroad to other countries, and everyone wants to replicate Silicon Valley. Not only every country, every region in America also wants to replicate Silicon Valley. And they have their own prescriptions. Florida's opening up this massive new science park, biotech park. Every region you go to opens up a science park. They invest typically hundreds of millions of dollars in building infrastructure around a university and think that by creating these buildings, now they're going to have innovation. I just went to Russia and I ripped their heads off. Before that I went to Chile and ripped their heads off. Actually 3 weeks ago I went to Japan and I wrote an article about Okinawa. The title of it was Why Okinawa's Innovation Experiment is Doomed. Or no, Okinawa's Doomed Innovation Experiment, okay? That tells you what my conclusion was based on that. Now, the question is why our national policy is so wrong? And what always bothers me is why have I as a tech guy been able to make such an impact? Why is Phil talking about my importance here? I shouldn't be important. I'm just a tech guy who joined academia 6 or 7 years ago. I have an MBA. I'm not a hardcore academic. I haven't done a PhD. I haven't had reams of PhD researchers working with me. It's been my students who've done all the work that I've been researching. Yet I'm able to shift national policy debates. I know that with the Chilean articles I wrote, I was able to get them to reconsider the entire policy, and they've actually implemented my recommendations. I'm going to talk about that at the end of my presentation. Russia, I was able to get through to the president of Russia, literally. The head of the Duma is now my buddy. The head of the technology The Russian Duma is my buddy now, and I'll talk about that. Now, Japanese, I haven't gotten feedback from. I think they're still in a state of shock at how brutal I was. It's a cultural thing with them. But I expect that when things calm down, they'll listen to me also. What I'm going to do is walk you through my research and tell you why I came to these conclusions, and share some of what I've learned along the way over the last few years. Feel free to interrupt me anytime you want with questions. We have 50 minutes, so I'm going to try to cover everything in 50 minutes and do as many questions as I can. Right, so I'm going to go very quickly through all this. First of all, read this list. These are some of the common prescriptions for global competitiveness. Graduate more engineers and scientists. And why do we keep talking about graduating more engineers and scientists? Because India and China graduate 650,000 engineers a year, 350,000 engineers a year, blah, blah, blah. 12 times what we do, therefore we're falling behind. Therefore, if we want to keep our competitiveness, we have to graduate more engineers and scientists, just because India and China do, right? And then we talk about investing in basic research. This doesn't go very well when I say it in universities, but I'll say it anyway. I mean, the common prescription that university professors have for the government is give us more money for basic research, and suddenly the country will be more innovative, right? And then science and tech parks, I talked about that. That's cool. The regions love it. Real estate developers love it. Politicians love it. They go and they have ribbon-cutting ceremonies. They now relate to science and technology, how they're going to leave a legacy on the world. And by the time people figured out that nothing happened here, they've been out of office for years, so it doesn't matter anymore. Everyone was happy while the party lasted. And then venture capital. I mean, especially in Silicon Valley, VC, venture capital, is considered to be the key to economic growth. And then it's all about getting, entrepreneurship is all about getting students to start companies. I think I'm going to end up insulting everyone by the time I'm done, but that's okay. Now, I could have put a big title up there saying myths. Okay, I'm going to tell you why I call these myths. First of all, this whole notion about India and China and so on. You've all read it about them graduating all these engineers and so on. This is a snapshot of 2004. When I published a paper in 2005, which rocked the academic. This is my first academic paper, and I had no idea what the firestorm I was creating by publishing these data. What we did was I had my students spend a semester researching the graduation rates of engineers in India and China, and we published a paper which said, here what the numbers are. This created such a firestorm that it reached the White House. I mean, 3 months after this was published, my dean at the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke University got called by the White House, and she sat next to 4 of the president's advisors at the State of the Union address who were thanking her for the magnificent research that Professor Wadhwa did. Boy, I said, this is quite a scam. I can get called a professor now. And they rave about my research. Plus, I was on TV every 5 minutes, it seemed. I mean, this was like I had found a cure for cancer when we published this data. And what this said basically was that, hey, the US is not, is not at a disadvantage in the number of engineers and scientists that graduates. That in 2004, the US actually graduated more. The Chinese numbers are very high, but if you look down there, that's academies for saying these numbers are completely bogus. You can't believe them. It's a propaganda that the Chinese government put out. That's what that says in academic language, saying that the collection methods and definitions of engineers are inconsistent. You see, when you write academic papers, you've got to be very cautious about what words you use. I did another project to look at what was really going on with graduation rates of engineers and scientists. We found was that China indeed was graduating a lot of engineers. Even if you cut that number by a third, China is still doing a great job at investing in science and technology. These are bachelor's rates. India is in pathetic shape. If you look at it, India started with a low base of engineers and scientists, and it hasn't really improved much at the bachelor's level. Masters. US engineering degrees and science correlates to this quite strongly, have been more or less constant. China has been graduating more. China actually graduates more masters than the United States. In India, I put 2 lines up there because one is the real Indian numbers, which is this line over here, and this is the bogus Indian number. They have a degree called the MCA degree, which is really for people who studied English to become computer programmers and work at Infosys. They call it masters. And the Indian government wanted credit for masters, so I put it up there, but with a disclaimer. Because when I published that first report, I became extremely unpopular in India, because I was challenging the education system, saying it's garbage, it's weak, there are lots of problems with it, the government is inflating the numbers, NASSCOM, which was inflating the numbers, I basically ripped their heads off. And that was my entry to academia, challenging everyone that I knew. So these are master's numbers. PhD numbers, China is way ahead of the United States right now in graduating PhDs in engineering. The Indian numbers are pathetic. All right? If you go by the common belief in the United States that education is everything, graduating engineers in science is everything, what would you conclude? You would conclude that China should be taking over the world right now. China should be exceeding America in innovative capacity. True? If graduation rates of engineers and scientists is everything, and China is way ahead in terms of PhDs and in terms of masters, and the trend is so far up, it should now be leading the world in innovation capacity. India should be pathetic. India should be falling off the map. India should have been a flash in the pan, and its IT industry should be imploding. The US should be constant. Okay. What we learned instead was quite surprising, and I'm going to get to that after one slide. Here's another data point. And this is relevant because I'm going to talk a little bit about immigration. About 60% of the PhDs we graduate in America are foreign nationals. I don't see many Indians and Chinese here, but if you went to the engineering school, you'd probably find them mostly foreigners. Right? About 45% of the masters are, 43% of the masters are foreign nationals. Okay, for the record, I got nothing against foreign nationals. But this is a problem for the United States because if indeed you are worried about innovative capacity and worried about education and graduation rates, we have, the majority of our most educated people are now foreigners. It's great if they stay. If they leave, we're in trouble. And I'm going to show you what's happening there. I can say these things and get away with it because I'm an Indian. If it was anyone else saying these things, they would look like I was being racist. All right, so I've done several research projects over the last few years. We actually went and looked deeply inside the labs of Indian and Chinese companies to see what was really happening there. And what we saw there was stunning, that despite the fact I had declared Indian industry dead in my first year as an academic, I had to go back 2 years after that and eat my words. Because when we went inside the labs of Indian companies, we found that there was an amazing amount of innovation happening there. Every industry we looked at, I couldn't believe this. I mean, this was defying gravity. We looked in the pharma industry, pharmaceuticals. We found was that Indian drug companies were developing the most sophisticated cures for the most cures for the worst diseases. I mean, they were developing the most sophisticated types of drugs. They were doing all sorts of advanced research in biologics, blah 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 blah. I mean, for example, in America, a heart patient, of which I'm one, takes 4 pills every day. Okay, the medication costs thousands of dollars a year. Probably, gets billed to the government is tens of thousands of dollars a year by drug companies. And Dr. Reddy's this year in India, which is one of India's leading pharma companies, is releasing a pill called the Poly pill, which combines 4 medications into one. Guess what the cost is? $30 per person per year. That's the cost in India. What would the market for in the United States? Maybe $300. Right? Now, the way they combined things was really innovative, and this is a byproduct. This is a product of Indian R&D. Okay. You look into aerospace. I mean, India is known for its IT industry, for software industry, so you'd expect them to be developing the in-flight entertainment systems and the software-oriented stuff for the aeronautical industry, for the aerospace industry. Except they're also developing airline seats, which is very touchy-feely. If you go to Tata Consulting over there, you'll see them, HCL, Hindustan Computers, you'll see labs where they have first-class cabins of airliners. The first-class cabin is really touchy-feely design stuff. It's the most critical component of the airline industry because that's where the money comes from, being done in India. You go into consumer appliances, GE, Whirlpool, they're designing the next generation's washers and dryers in Pune, India. I mean, it's amazing when you go inside the labs over there, they actually have washers and dryers over there because most of their employees have never used a washer or dryer before. They don't know how they work. So they come in, they wash their clothes at work to get an idea of how the technology works so they can develop the next generations. Right. Semiconductors, the same thing is happening there. You see the most sophisticated components being developed there. For example, the Amazon Kindle. Guess where the circuitry for that was designed? New Delhi. Have you ever heard that? American companies don't talk about it because to talk about outsourcing means backlash. In the days of Lou Dobbs, they would get hammered by him incessantly for having outsourced America. But that's the new reality. And I'm not talking about thousands of people. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of people doing sophisticated R&D in India. You go to China. China looks like a modern version of Europe. It's just